Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 461 for the 20th of August 2017. Richard Saunders here with you from a windy Sydney, Australia. In fact, we had, just over the last couple of days, we had record-breaking gale force winds blowing out windows and all sorts of things in Sydney. Good weather for flying kites. Or not, I'm not sure. Cool and crisp and windy in Sydney, Australia. But just between you and me, folks, I would rather not be in Sydney, Australia right now. I would rather be with my old mate Evan Bernstein from the Skeptics Guide to the Universe. He is, as I record this introduction, he is dead smack bang center in the path of totality for the upcoming solar eclipse. He's traveled all the way from Connecticut to Oregon, and he has a front row seat. We're going to catch up with Evan in a moment, an interview I recorded a few days ago, where he will tell us about the excitement that this eclipse is generating and a bit more about the science. So to kick off the Skeptic Zone, Total Eclipse with Evan Bernstein. And Evan reminds us a bit later on that it's 10 years today, in fact. Well, yesterday, as far as Australia is concerned, but today in the United States, since the passing of Perry DeAngelis, one of the founding members of the Skeptics Guide to the Universe. Following that, it's Brew Ha Ha Science, this week with Kelly Wong, talking about renewable energy versus old-fashioned energy, I guess we could put it that way. And she's wondering which energy will win out in the end. Then it's the Raw Skeptic Heidi Robertson with a report she recorded some weeks ago at the Star Stuff Astronomy weekend she went to up in Byron Bay. One of the people she met was a man called John who had a very touching story to tell about his late son. And it really is a caution to us all about the dangers of, in fact, not vaccinating. I think you'll find this story very moving. And also we'll play a little bit of the government, the federal government's new campaign to encourage parents to vaccinate. Then to round off the show, Maynard's spooky action. Maynard and I went to the launch of the Sydney Science Festival, which was at the launched from the Powerhouse Museum. And what a fabulous night that was. Scientists everywhere, people everywhere, lots to see, lots to do, lots of people to chat to. Maynard even interviews a snake. Well, sort of. He interviews a snake wrangler from the Taronga Park Zoo here in Sydney. We also chat to scientists there on the spot, on the desks, talking to the general public, including the fabulous Dr. Jodi Rowley from the Australian Museum, one of Australia's leading experts into frogs. Lots of interviews coming up from the launch of the Science Festival at the Powerhouse Museum. And a big thank you to our dear friend Frankie Lee, who helped line up some of these interviews and helped us out on the night. Thank you, Frankie. I know she listens to the Skeptic Zone every week. Or she says she does. Links to everything in the show notes as normal. And that's at skepticzone.tv. Or, in fact, if you're listening to this on an iPhone, I think if you tap the image, you'll get the show notes. I'm not sure how that works on Android. Probably more or less the same. But anyway, they are available. And in fact, the show notes are also available if you are listening to this episode via YouTube. In the description, you can see all the show notes with the accompanying time codes for every segment. Please listen at the end of this episode for an important announcement from me. But in the meantime, it's time for me to run downstairs. Where are those cats? The door's shut, you see. Sometimes little paws come under the door. Not today. They must be downstairs waiting for their breakfast, I think. Anyway, I'm going to run downstairs, maybe feed the cats. They deserve it. Then I'm going to have some eggs. Poached eggs. Yeah, poached eggs on toast with a little bit of salt and maybe some avocado. And a coffee. Okay, that sounds pretty good to me. While I'm enjoying all that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Joining me now from beautiful, and I mean beautiful, Connecticut in the United States, it's my old friend from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, Evan Bernstein.
Hi, Richard.
Really nice to quickly catch up with you because it's very exciting. It's even exciting in this part of the world, and we're not going to see it ourselves. The wonderful, incredible eclipse. What can you briefly tell our listeners about that?
It's coming up on, well, at least in the United States time zones, August 21st, 2017. So we're just a measly 5 days away from it happening. And this eclipse is going to go the stretch of the United States from coast to coast, Pacific coast to the Atlantic coast. 12 states will have a view, 12 million people living in the path of totality of the eclipse. The rest of the country will be entertained by a beautiful partial solar eclipse. And the highest estimates I've heard are as many as 30 million people are going to be traveling and making arrangements to see this one.
That's mind-blowing. We've heard about solar eclipses, and every year, in fact, I think, maybe not every year, but quite regularly throughout a given century, the world will experience solar eclipses. But they're sort of, I've noticed, all over the planet, aren't they?
Absolutely, they are, and our planet is mostly water. So a lot of times that these solar eclipses happen, they happen over a body of water. So right there, you can wipe out sort of 2/3 of them from people or large amounts of people being able to be witness to them. So, and they only happen at the same point at any given point in the Earth once every 375 years. I looked up that statistic.
Oh,
today,
really?
So I
wow.
found that fascinating. Yep. Yeah, that's it. So this one's special because a lot of people are going to have access to this one, and it's also interesting because you're getting a lot of people into a very sort of small space of the United States. It's only 100 kilometers long, this swath that's going across the country, and if 30 million people are going to try to get to that line of totality, boy, that's something we've really never experienced or seen before ever. So this will be very interesting to see how it all pans out.
Now, a couple of things I will say. You have every day now since was it the beginning of the month? You've had a little 2, 3, 4, 5 minute web video on about different aspects of the upcoming solar eclipse. And what an interesting little exercise that's been. It's like bite-sized little bits of science every day with Evan. I've really enjoyed that, and well done for actually thinking about that and doing it.
Well, thanks, Richard. I appreciate it, and for the people who do follow my page, my personal page on Facebook. What I wanted to do is put together sort of 3 weeks of build-up up to the solar eclipse because it's been on my mind largely for 38 years. Just about most of my life since I was a 9-year-old boy, and it's really was my first foray into science. So this is really the culmination of a very long journey for me, in which I've paid close attention to this actually. And I wanted to sort of put together a video diary so that people could sort of experience how I'm not only feeling about things, but also bring to them some interesting facts, a little bit of history, and certainly some science pertaining to the solar eclipse, which is what has me so excited.
I'm not surprised. People who I have spoken to recently who have seen one have said it's just the most incredible or inspiring experience. Now, let me ask you something, and maybe you can be of great benefit to our listeners in the United States who are going to see this. I am a little bit concerned, I must say, that so many people will be rushing to see this. They may be a little bit unprepared. What are your top safety tips? Because there is a danger, isn't there?
There is a danger with looking at the sun. Anytime you're looking at the sun, let's not forget exactly what this is. You're going to be looking at the sun. And we all know that that's very, very bad for us, can cause a lot of damage. So think about that first and foremost anytime that there's an eclipse, because that's really what's happening. You must have approved eyewear, eye protection. And there are plenty of places online. I'm sorry I don't have those directly at my fingertips. You can go to NASA's website. I know they've got it, and they will tell you exactly how to check and make sure that your eyewear is correct. Because there is concern that some substandard eye protection has gotten out there to people, certainly people who maybe purchased glasses a while back, even as long as a year ago, and not those companies were not 100% up to speed on the specifications that needed to be done for this eclipse. So especially if you've got the older glasses, double check and make sure that it's the right coating. And again, you can go to NASA's website along with and many other places on the web. It's a very quick search to validate your eyewear. Plenty of other instructional videos, also YouTube and elsewhere, if you want to protect your binoculars, if you're going to be using binoculars or even telescopes to watch the eclipse. Plenty of good information out there at how to make sure your filters are correct, or if you're going to be making your own filters, how to make sure everything is safely secured. You must have eye protection at all times, with one exception. This is it. Again, I want to drive this home. You've got to have your eye protection on the whole time, with one exception. It's that 2 to 2.5 minutes of pure totality. Yeah. If you are in that line of totality, if you are in that 100-kilometer band along the United States, then you can remove your eyewear. Wow. But just for those moments that it's in perfect totality. Otherwise, glasses on.
You're going to be, and millions of other people will experience, about roughly 2 minutes of totality.
Where I'm going to be in Oregon, it's 2 minutes, and at its longest duration, which will be in Kentucky, Tennessee, around the middle of the country, 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Wow. It has to do with the angle of the moon and certainly everything and the rotation of the Earth at that time, which is why it varies a little bit along the path, which is normal, which is considered on the short side for solar eclipses, because some solar eclipses can be as long as 7 minutes. Wow. In duration. Yeah, those are very impressive ones. But, total solar eclipses are rare enough where people get to see them. I'll take 2 minutes. I would take 1 minute. I would be equally excited. So I really can't wait.
Well, the exciting news for people in my neck of the woods in Sydney, Australia, is I think in the next decade, I was looking at a website earlier, there is a total eclipse going to go right over Sydney.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Send me the date. I will be there.
Oh, right. I think
assuming I'm not too old to.
Well, I was just saying, you and I will be both retired. We'll be sitting there in our armchairs, somewhere in Sydney with a couple of drinks, enjoying it. I'll have to look that one up, folks. But yeah, sometime I think in the 20s, in the 2020s, there'll be one right over Sydney. Evan, wow, what a pleasure to quickly catch up with you. And I am thrilled to bits, and I'll be thrilled to bits to stay up all night here in Sydney, Australia. And by the way, folks, and you can probably figure out now from what I'm about to say exactly when I'm talking to Evan, because I'm looking at the NASA website, and there's a countdown clock, and it says, ellipse countdown until first contact in Oregon, August 21st, is 5 days, 16 hours, and 37 minutes. And by the time this episode of the Skeptic Zone goes out, it'll be a lot less than that. And Evan, I'm delighted that I'll be seeing you and the rest of SGU in a couple of months at the SciCon in Las Vegas. That's going to be great.
That's right. The last weekend in October, SciCon in Las Vegas. I can't wait to see you there.
So there you go. Exciting times coming up. Evan, I'm jealous, and I'm jealous of our reporter Eran Segev, who's going to be there. He's traveled all the way to the United States to see it. And all I can say is good luck, and I hope you have clear skies.
Thank you, Richard, as do I. Solar Eclipse Misconceptions. NASA has dedicated a page on their website to these, a few of which I've not heard before. For example, that total solar eclipses produce harmful rays that can cause blindness. And what they're talking about here is not the direct light of the sun, but rather the emission of electromagnetic radiation from the corona, which the scientists have studied very thoroughly for a long time. And they're saying that nothing in the coronal light can cross 150 million kilometers of space, penetrate our atmosphere, and cause blindness. So that is a myth. Another one. If you are pregnant, you should not watch the eclipse because it can harm your baby. Again, incorrect. What they're talking about in this one are neutrinos. The sun emits trillions of neutrinos constantly that penetrate everywhere. Space, the moon, the planet, and you.
So it's happening all the time, and it offers and poses no threat to a pregnant woman or her fetus. Another one. Eclipses will poison any food that is prepared during the event. This is interesting. They say it's related to the false idea of harmful solar rays. During a total solar eclipse, some type of radiation is produced that will harm your food. No problem there. Don't worry about that. Although be cautious of eating in and around the eclipses to be courteous to others. But other than that, there is no harm in the food that you'll be eating. So this is an interesting website, eclipse2017.nasa.gov. Look up eclipse misconceptions. There are some more there for you to read. And enjoy.
Today's Saturday, August 19th, just 2 days to go before the eclipse. I am here in Oregon at my destination, dead center line of the eclipse. Cannot wait. But I'm not going to talk about the eclipse today. I'm going to talk about Perry DeAngelis. Perry died 10 years ago today. Still, perhaps the saddest day of my life. One of the two saddest days of my life. The other was the passing of my father, and certainly the passing of Perry. These are the two people who have gone in my life, who I think about every single day, without fail. No doubt about it. Without Perry, there would be no Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Without Perry, there would have been no New England Skeptical Society. And without Perry, there would have been no Connecticut Skeptical Society, which was really the acorn for everything leading up to the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. The influence he had on both our little local skeptics organization and what became ultimately the show is too great to measure. He was a tremendously great friend to me, one of my certainly best friends ever. And I think people had got a real good sense of his bigger-than-life personality from the show and just from the 100 or so episodes that he participated in before he died. And again, we're reminded of that quite often by listeners and others. I know that Bob misses him, Jay misses him, Steve misses him, Kara would have missed him had she had the chance certainly to have met him. And like I said before, I miss him every single day. So today, I dedicate to you, my dear friend Perry DeAngelis. 10 years ago, we've lost you. You'll never be forgotten. Your influence on the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe will continue for as long as we do these episodes and even beyond that. And I just wanted to make sure that this day was dedicated for you.
And now, direct from the cafe at Australia's Science Channel, it's Brew Ha Ha. Science in less time than it takes to order a coffee. With Kelly Wong.
Australia, we have a showdown. In one corner, we have the technology of the future, and in the other, the technology of the 1800s. The world's largest solar thermal power plant is coming to Port Augusta in South Australia. This latest renewable energy news comes after the announcement of the world's biggest lithium-ion battery, and joins a whole bunch of existing and planned wind turbines. The solar thermal plant works by using mirrors to reflect sunlight onto a tower that heats up molten salt. This creates steam, which will power turbines to generate energy. Plus, the salt stores heat, so any excess energy can be saved to keep generating electricity when the sun isn't shining. Meanwhile, over in Queensland, we have massive coal mines being planned and invested in. But hey, we love a good showdown, and this should be an incredible one. Which state will come up on top? It's a test of how much benefit can be gained from renewable energy. The data from the economic and environmental outputs will speak for themselves. But between you and me, I know who I'd put my money on.
For more Brew Ha Ha and Australian science, visit www.australiascience.tv or visit Australia's Science Channel on Facebook. It's the Raw Skeptic Report with Heidi Robertson.
Okay, on another break from the Star Stuff event, and I'm here with one of the attendees. Who have we got here?
You've got John.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
And have you been enjoying the event so far?
Oh, very much so. Particularly the talks, the presentations have been amazing. So
yeah, have you had a favourite one so far?
No, a few. Alan Duffy, David Mellon. I mean, they're all Fred Watson. They're all amazing people. So, but everyone's been enthusiastic. Actually, Dylan. I think Dylan's a star.
Yeah, who's entertaining, wasn't
Very
he?
entertaining, and particularly for me, it's the photographic things I've learnt or reminded. It's actually not rocket science. That's a good one analogy, isn't it? That actually it's fairly simple, but also encouraged to just have a go.
Yes, I learned a lot as well, not knowing much about photography to start with, but it's actually inspired me to get out there and get out the camera at home. It's so easy just to take your mobile phone with you and get lazy about getting the camera out, but I'm going to start getting the camera out again. I've been very inspired by what I've heard this weekend.
Yeah, and I think that the ability to reduce noise, take that stack multiple photos, and you have to have software to stitch them together. But Mike G just talked about single photos. He just does 30-second exposures, and that's it. So anyone can have a go.
That's right.
Just need less light pollution.
Yeah, that's true, and that was another talk about light pollution.
Yes, it was a very interesting talk.
But you and I we got talking, I think it was yesterday in one of the breaks, and as it always tends to do with me, the conversation comes around to vaccination because, and as listeners of the podcast know, that's one of my passions, and trying to raise awareness and you told me a story of how this issue has touched you personally. Could you share your story?
Well, our second son, Matthew, like to be called Matt, was a fairly severe asthmatic, and we discovered this at an early age. He was allergic to a lot of things like egg, milk, chocolate, and other various, I'm not sure about nuts, but in the early 80s a lot of this stuff wasn't tested for. He was unable to have a whooping cough vaccination, and it was actually on medical advice that we declined. A little bit later he was 4, and we're in the UK, and he contracted whooping cough, and he was pretty unwell. We had no idea what was going on, but we did get told it was whooping cough. He grew up. He grew less problems with asthma. He started to be able to tolerate foods like milk and other things. But whenever he was really unwell, we could still hear this in his voice, the classic whooping cough sign. Anyway, one of the side effects of his asthma was that he had a lot of prednisone. Prednisone affects the teeth, particularly if you have a lot of it. And when he was in his 20s, he had to have a emergency operation to have his wisdom teeth out because they actually were crumbling and they were abscessing and all sorts of nasty stuff. And unfortunately, during the operation, he had a severe asthma attack, and a result of a severe asthma attack, if you stop breathing, eventually the heart stops, and it took them 15 minutes to get it restarted. And the unfortunate result of that was that he was declared brain dead. A little bit of a bright light was that he'd let us know that he wanted to donate organs. So I don't know why a 20-year-old would think about that, but he had. And so we were able to say yes to the organ donation, and we had a wonderful story, a letter from all the relatives of this little 4-year-old girl in Victoria who received one of his kidneys, and she'd gone from being incredibly unwell, with the condition, to being a normal little 4-year-old girl again. So it just made our Christmas, that first Christmas, because Matt loved Christmas, was very hard. There were other conditions that contributed to him having this asthma attack. I mean, unfortunately, like a lot of rebel young folk, he'd started smoking. But it shocked the anaesthesia community. They had never expected that a young adult, 20-year-old, would have that sort of a problem under anaesthesia. If Matt had been vaccinated against whooping cough, I wouldn't be telling you the story.
So what you're saying is in relation to the whooping cough, it did have permanent effect on his lungs. He might have had bronchiectasis or something like that, permanent scarring of the lungs from whooping cough, which then, along with the asthma and other contributing factors, may have contributed to what happened ultimately.
Well, I would say without doubt. I'm not a medical person. We did decline a formal coroner's inquiry. A friend of ours who was a doctor said we wouldn't get any answers out of it. He was dead, we wouldn't get him back. So I would believe so. I know now that before any asthmatic is going under anaesthesia, they do actually do tests, or they will demand tests. So that was one positive. But yeah, I believe he was really sensitive to it, and whatever triggered it, he'd been under anaesthesia before, but this particular time, all the variables meant that he had this attack. And I actually asked once, why didn't they just bring him out as the anaesthetic? And they said it would have been a nightmare. They actually couldn't do that. They had to keep him going until they tried to fix the problem.
Yeah.
But yes, I firmly believe that if he'd had the vaccination, hadn't got whooping cough, we would have still had our Matt.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for what you've been through, but so grateful that you've been able to share the story, because vaccination is such a hot topic around here, and we need people like you to tell those stories about how it has personally affected your lives and the life of your son. But what an amazing legacy that he was an organ donor.
Yes, it was wonderful. And it was for
saved other lives.
It was for a friend of my wife's who had received organs. He was really ill and started again, if you like. And actually, we've been to a few in Queensland. They have a service every year for donors or donor families and organ recipients. And to see these recipients, what they do with their life is very positively encouraging. But just getting back to the vaccination thing, I think that if you don't want your own child vaccinated, think about who that child comes in contact with. Yes. I mean, you're giving them something. If they're not vaccinated themselves and they can't be vaccinated, like my Matt, no chance.
Yes, so herd immunity, community immunity is just so important. It's not just to protect ourselves, it's to protect the vulnerable in our community as well.
And to even be talking about having a whooping cough problem in this day and age where we shouldn't have it. It just should not occur. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time today. It was such a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
To add to Heidi's report, in the last week, the Australian government has launched a campaign to persuade parents to get their children vaccinated and their children's vaccinations up to date. And I thought it would be appropriate to play the audio from one of the accompanying videos of this campaign.
We wanted to make sure our kids were protected from serious diseases,
which is why I made sure this one completed our vaccinations.
93% of Aussie kids are fully vaccinated, but it's not high enough. We need to do more to protect all our kids. Our baby Dana died from whooping cough. She was only 1 month old and too young to be vaccinated.
We lived in an area with low immunisation rates.
Our baby son Rowley died from a vaccine-preventable disease. Nothing can bring him back.
But together we can all help to prevent this tragedy from happening to other families.
Vaccination protects your child from serious diseases, but it also protects other children too. Immunisation saves lives. Get the facts.
Visit the website, authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
This campaign from the government comes hot on the heels of the recent tour of the so-called documentary Vaxxed, which you've been hearing about on the last couple of episodes of the Skeptic Zone. And we can only hope that some of the damage done by this wretched documentary is being undone by this campaign from the federal government.
skeptičtí přátelé, zdraví vás Claire Klienberg, spoluorganizátorka Evropského skeptického kongresu 2017. Letošní kongres se bude konat v polské Vratislavi od 22. do 24. září a je mou ctí vás tam pozvat. Přijďte a poslechněte si příspěvky od osobností jako jsou James Randi, Susan Gerbic, Mark Linnes, Susan Blackmore, Scott Linfield a další. Pohovořte o tématech jako náboženství a věda, pseudověda a média, paranormální vyšetřování a další. Pro koupi vstupenky a pro více informací běžte na euroskepticscon.org a nebo nás najděte na Facebooku. Těšíme se na vás! Hello, dear skeptical friends. This is Claire Klienberg, co-organizer of the European Skeptics Congress 2017. This year, the Congress will be held in Wrocław, Poland on September 22nd to 24th, and it is my absolute pleasure to invite you to attend. Come and listen to talks by James Randi, Susan Gerbic, Mark Linnes, Susan Blackmore, Scott Lilienfeld, and others. Discuss topics like science and religion, pseudoscience and media, paranormal investigation, and more. To buy a ticket and to get more information about the Congress, go to euroskepticscon.org or find us on Facebook. See you there!
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Yes, the inner city of Sydney here, where we've got the amazing Harris Street Ultimo with the wonderful Powerhouse here. It is the opening, sort of a bit of an event for Sydney Science Festival. That's right, it's Science Week, Sydney Science Festival, all going on here. And being Sydney, everyone's talking about their career, everyone's talking about Chinese investment in the property market, everybody's talking about how they had to borrow money from their parents to even think about owning a house, and people are talking about how it's just too expensive to live in Sydney in the first place. But of course, it's all about science. So you never know, we could meet some scientists here tonight, and that's why I'm here. That's why I've slicked my hair back, because they might just think I'm Max Headroom. Maynard here, coming to you from Mars. Now, as we all know, this isn't Mars, but everything you see from the Mars rover and all those Mars lander stuff, and even that movie The Martian, was nowhere near Mars. It was actually shot at Harris Street Ultimo, and you can tell because if they had the sound up, and that's why they don't send sound back from Mars, because you'd hear the traffic going past on Harris Street, and that's how you can tell that we're not on Mars. It's all just done somewhere in Harris Street Ultimo, like most stuff. I think the space program's done down the pool, down the road. That's why. Yeah, whenever you're seeing the universal, the IIS, the International Space Station, whenever you see that going around, that is in fact shot in the pool just down the road in Harris Street Ultimo. Why spend money going there when you can do it in a pool? I've always thought that. Look, as I said, I'm just standing next to where all the Mars rover stuff is faked. And here is Mr. Faker, a member of the Shadow Elite, a man of the Origami First Order. It is Richard Saunders. Hello.
This is Mars, Maynard. This is not the Powerhouse Museum. We're on Mars. This is quite good, isn't it? It looks like Mars. Well, I guess it does.
It is pretty cool there. It looks a lot like my dad's old rockery in Katara in Newcastle.
Maybe that's where they filmed the moon landing. I don't know.
I think they probably did. Now, there's a fair few people here.
Yeah.
We don't seem to know any of them. Is that because these are the people that have power?
It's because we're getting old.
Yeah, that's true. Look, although I say when I want to go out to a wild night, the Powerhouse usually isn't the place I come to unless it's actually closed. Then you can have fun.
Well, you know what? As soon as we walked in, they gave us champagne and hors d'oeuvres, so that's not too bad. No, we're here for the launch of the Sydney Science Festival, so I'm really looking forward to it. And you and I are taking part tomorrow. In fact, tomorrow morning we're doing science shows for school kids.
That's right. We're going to be doing stuff at the Australian Museum with the mystery investigators, where we solve mysteries for them, like can you poke a hole in yourself with a bed of nails, that sort of thing.
and you get to stand on my back when I'm on a bed of nails. So, yeah.
And play the trombone while standing on your back.
You do, but look at everybody. There are hundreds of people here, all waiting for the speeches to get underway. But so many people here for science. It's great to see.
It is good. Not many people here on the side of phrenology, which is my favourite. I've been trying to see if there's any phrenology fans here. Haven't seen one.
Well, you have to look for some. I bet there will be.
And, of course, we're going to be interested to see what the theme is this year. Normally they have a bit of a theme. What do you think they'll be going with this year?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what maybe it should be phrenology, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be pushing that. Oh, and, of course, for the Skeptic Zone for you, we've been given the tip that upstairs shortly there's going to be 25 scientists.
25. Yes, our good friend Frankie Lee, we've known for years here in Sydney, she walked by us with a tray of drinks. She was carting behind us saying, come upstairs at 7 o'clock. We have 25 scientists for you to interview.
I'm sure there'll be a phrenologist up there, and if I can't find a phrenologist, what are the scientists that make the ray guns? What are they? Are they physicists or not?
I think that's Captain Kirk, isn't it?
It's Batman. I'll be upstairs looking for Batman. Okay. I'm just talking to a gentleman now. What's the diamond python's name, first of all?
This one, Yarra.
Okay. Yeah. And what's your name, sir?
Ryan.
And how are things at Taronga Zoo?
Absolutely beautiful. Pretty, really good. Animals are happy, so it's amazing.
We have a lot of overseas listeners to the podcast, the Skeptics, and they think that Australia's full of things that will kill you. But this diamond python, it's a constrictor, so it kills. What does it like to eat? Is it egg eater? What's it do?
Mainly, if you can look at it's got some pits against its jaw. They're heat pits. Right. It likes to eat warm-blooded creatures. Not saying it won't eat frogs and lizards and things like that, but predominantly birds. It will eat rats, mice, and possums as well.
Okay. So where do they live? Do they live under your house, or they live in some shrub?
What a lot of people will find is if they've got a chicken coop, or if they get possums up in their roof, they will get these. Beautiful creatures. Once the food source runs out, they will move on.
So they like the baby possums when they're born, because the big ones move too fast.
Yeah, oh, mate, they're quick enough to get big ones
really?
too. So
okay.
Really beautiful creatures. And just with this one too, she's there's absolutely no signs of stress with this girl. She's really inquisitive, and what she's looking at, this lady over here, she's looking at her scarf. They love textures, so what she's doing is she's checking out this jacket.
Also, so that's a tweed jacket Richard Saunders is wearing.
Look at her little tongue coming out. She's smelling in two directions.
Right, so it's smelling, and so is her three-dimensional view of the world being made by the eyes and the tongue together? And how good are the eyes? They got colour. What do they do?
And the heat as well with these ones. Yeah, infrared more so.
Okay.
So with these ones, yeah, they'll go through all these. So with these, what they do, if a creature comes through, say it's a warm-blooded creature in the dark, just say there's a rat or a mouse or a bat that flies past, with her, what she'll do, she senses heat through her jaw. As they get closer, warmer, and she grabs them. So they sense through infrared more so than anything.
Is it interested in eating anything?
What's that? No, not at the moment. We probably feed her about once every 2 weeks, and she got fed not that long ago, and she's not here to be fed. We are not part of her diet.
Yes, because she'd be saying, man, that's a very large heat source,
So right now, beautiful creature, and this is one of our education animals as well. So what we're doing here, great function, great to be at the Powerhouse, but it's also about just educating people about animals and what they can do to help as well.
Look, cool. And look, more power to the Taronga Zoo there. And just one last thing. We're in New South Wales at the moment. Would this be a native to, would we see, all over Australia, or mainly the eastern seaboard?
Bushwalk probably 3 weeks ago and came across 2 of these. Absolutely.
Good. Really. Do they look like a dangerous snake, so you could make a mistake and go, uh-oh?
There are other creatures out there that have similar markings that have them, but this is a constrictor.
Okay.
But the main thing is,
it's a green one that looks like that. It's okay. Is that right?
Look, all snakes in the wild, I wouldn't touch them. There can be venomous snakes, and a lot of species look very similar as well. Also, even if she did strike, she's got backward-facing fangs for gripping her prey. So it could hurt as well. So the main thing is too, any wild animals, just leave them alone, admire them, get a photo, but just. You don't have to handle them. You don't have to touch them. Leave them alone and just admire our natural, beautiful creatures.
Thank you. And what's a website we could go to learn more about what you're doing in education?
Taronga.Org.au. That's
right. Have a good time here. Everyone's lining up for that. Oh, look. That was cool. Now we go from snakes to over here to frogs. And as you know, we were just talking about snakes then, and when it comes to biology, people can be very speciesist. A lot of people are big fans of snakes. A lot of people are big on the higher primates. But of course, I'm here with someone who's into amphibians and frogs. Jodi, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. You are just glowing at the moment.
It's great to be here, and I think you know that I love to talk about frogs.
Oh, I know indeed. Now, I was over there with snakes. Now, are snakes the sworn enemy of frogs?
There are a lot of snakes that are adapted to eating frogs, and one of the things about being a frog biologist is I do come across a lot of snakes because of that.
So do you meet the ones that are constrictors, or do you meet poisonous, dangerous ones in the South American forest?
A bit of both. The kind of snakes that like frogs tend to not be the constrictors. They're often the ones with venom, but not always. So you come across all kinds, especially the ones that like water. But as long as you don't mess with them, they don't generally mess with you. So you just leave them on their sort of path.
Because the greatest animal of all time is the axolotl.
It is.
Friend of the frog.
Yes, it's an amphibian, definitely. So in Australia we're most familiar with frogs because that's all we got in the amphibian lottery. But there are also salamanders and newts, of which the axolotl is one, and there's caecilians, the most poorly known of the amphibians.
Oh, well, now's the time. The caecilian, which is a great name for a band or a song, where do they come from and where do they sit on the evolutionary tree?
They're a type of amphibian, but they're limbless, and they look a lot like worms. So they don't occur in Australia. They occur primarily in the tropics, and they live largely underground. And so I have spent a lot of my time in the forests of tropical Southeast Asia picking up worms, thinking, is this my caecilian? And I've only ever seen 2 caecilians in my life because I don't go digging for them. I wait until they come up on the surface, and that's where I see them. But there's some pretty amazing amphibians.
You were talking about Australia and the evolutionary lottery. I thought that we were an old country because all our mountains were kind of worn down. So I thought that we've evolved past amphibians. Is that why we haven't got them?
No, we just only got the frogs in sort of when the continents were all together. We got the frogs and we didn't get the salamanders and caecilians hop on board. And so we got an amazing diversity of frogs, especially in the sort of things that they do. So we've got tree frogs, so things that are genetically tree frogs that have now adapted to the drying continent of Australia and spend most of their life, years sometimes, underground. So water-holding frogs, which are quite sort of famous, are actually are big frogs that are full of water in their bladders. So during the sort of arid times for years in the outback, these things will just be buried underground in a form of cocoon, being slightly waterproof, and they only come up when it absolutely pours with rain. But these are tree frogs, things that you think, that should be living in trees in the tropics, but our frogs have done some amazing things to adapt to Australia as we drifted away from being a lot warmer.
And of course, do you get many questions about the introduced species such as the cane toad? Now, what was the cane toad originally? That was from South America, and I guess you must hate it because it must cause damage among our native frogs, doesn't it?
It causes a lot of damage, particularly for predators. So our native animals grew up, or evolutionarily have had a whole bunch of tasty frogs that didn't cause them any harm. And they see something that looks like a frog, a cane toad, and they've been eating those things for their whole evolutionary history. And so they think, obviously, I can eat that. That's a delicious item. And then all of a sudden, these things are poisonous, and they're not used to things that look like frogs that are poisonous. So that's why they're so harmful.
And where's it from? It's originally from South America. Where's it from? Yeah. And what was it supposed to eat, which it didn't?
It was meant to eat the cane beetle, so a pest of our cane crops, and that's actually been introduced around the world. I think ours were from Hawaii, from the cane fields there. They got introduced there first, then they got introduced here. And people thought that they would eat this cane beetle, this cane grub. But of course, that was kind of hard. They didn't really like having to go to that effort, so they ate everything else instead, and they've spread. And potentially you would think that they would be just adapted to living in the tropics, but they seem to be marching on and adapting. I mean, I don't hate them at all because I think they're an amazing amphibian. It's not their fault that they're here, and they're actually quite amazing amphibians. They're unlike most frogs, they're quite smart, I guess, in some ways, and they don't rely on the animal moving in front of their face for them to eat it. So cane toads have actually been observed eating dog food out of a dog's bowl and things, which is super strange for a normal frog. They would never be caught dead doing something like that. So you've got to give them some credit for being so adaptable and being dumped in Australia and then making the best of it, for sure. But it is sad to see them in some of these really amazingly remote places, and hearing that things like quolls and goannas that used to be so common in these areas are now so rare because they're just not used to anything that looks like a frog being poisonous.
Look, one of the things I love talking to Dr. Jodi is there's always news in the world of frogs that the rest of us kind of miss out. What briefly is new in the world of frogs that we should know about right now?
Oh, well...
Is there something been discovered recently or something?
I've been reading a fair bit lately about the chemical compounds that are being discovered on frog skin. So frogs are essentially like agar
Now
plates.
you're tripping balls, yeah.
Yes, well, it's along those lines, but frogs have to protect themselves from getting infected by bacteria, fungi, viruses, and actually the peptides and even the bacteria on the frog's skin have evolved to kind of protect them from that. So we're looking at things like the foam nests of frogs are being used as a drug delivery system because the bubbles in the foam pop at a constant rate. So if you can make things out of it for human medicine, you will get a constant drug delivery rate. We're using the secretions on frog skin, investigating their use as anti-HIV, other antiviral, antifungal, even contraceptives. So it's sort of one of the more, I guess, practical uses of frogs, and one other reason that we should care about their decline.
There's lots of people who want to speak to you here. One last question. Favourite frog in popular culture? Freddo, Kermit, which one?
Oh, Kermit.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. Oh, yes. I grew up with Kermit.
If they could only play the banjo, wouldn't that be great? If you were in South America, you'd trek through this forest, you'd be all dirty, and then there's a frog playing a banjo, singing... what is it? What's the song?
Rainbow Connection.
Rainbow Connection, yes.
We do have a frog in Australia called the Eastern Banjo frog, and that is called so because it goes bong, 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 and people think it sounds like a banjo. So you may have a banjo frog in your garden yet.
Wow, I think I know the one you're talking about. That is great. Is it common in urban areas? Yeah.
This is probably the striped marsh frog you're thinking of, which is very closely related, and it's more like bok, like a tennis ball being hit. Wow. And the funniest story I heard was someone saying that they thought that the tennis court next to their house was actually haunted at night as they heard games of tennis being played. Oh. In fact, it was the striped marsh frog calling to attract females.
Look, everyone's probably got very interested in frogs right now, so where can we find out more at your website? Where can we go?
The Australian Museum is the best place, and I'll write blogs regularly. There's one coming up about frog sex as well, so you should probably sort of get online and find that one.
That's Dr. Jodi at the Australian Museum website.
Thank you.
Oh, look, it's hard to find a scientist tonight because everyone's really busy. We've got two here. Who have we got?
Oh, my name's Joanne Ocock.
And you got your doctorate in and where at?
I got my doctorate in amphibian biology at the University of New South Wales. I'm into frogs, I'm into wetlands. Let's do something wonderful.
And all the people that have seen you tonight, what's been the one question they've been asking you about amphibians?
I've had very few questions about amphibians tonight, mostly been because I work broadly in Murray-Darling Basin, wetlands and floodplains and environmental water, so I've also done a bit of work these days with waterbirds, so I had a few more questions about the big waterbird breeding events, and yeah, the frogs because they eat the waterbirds, but at the moment it's mostly been about waterbirds.
Oh, look, I've got a question for you. Should we drink the water in Adelaide?
I've got no idea. What's wrong with that?
It sort of starts up where you are and it ends up down there. I'm just wondering, should we be drinking the water in Adelaide? Because it tastes funny.
Isn't it all salinated? Desaled, I should rather say. Yeah. As long as we keep the basins and the rivers going, then the water in Adelaide, it won't have a bad origin, but it's been it's had a long journey.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised there is any water in Adelaide.
Oh, yeah, same. So am I.
Well, have a good night here. And you're next to who? We've got more environmental science here. Who have we got here and where did you get your doctorate from?
I also got my doctorate from UNSW.
Oh, there?
Yeah, Rebecca Swanson. I did my doctorate in marine chemical ecology.
Wow, okay. Does that mean you have to do diving and everything with it or not? You have to get into the water a fair bit?
You do, yes. Oh. But I did probably over 100 dives, but I only actually dived to about 2 to 3 metres, so they're not really the most interesting dives.
Okay. Well, that's where you find a lot of life. I mean, sure, there's stuff further down, but what you're looking at is fairly shallow. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I was looking at sea urchins, and they live in the kelp that live just in that first few metres of the rocky shelves there. Oh. So they hide in the fronds. They're not the spiny ones that you step on when you're walking around the rock platform. Oh. They're much prettier ones with little spines that wrap themselves up in the seaweed. So that's what I was looking for.
Oh. Can we eat seagrass? I've got to say, we can eat seaweed. Can we eat seagrass, or has it got really... everyone's going, ooh, here at the table. Would you eat seagrass?
Would you want to?
If I was told that it was palatable and if it was cooked in the right fashion.
Okay, and it was in good water.
Yeah, so I don't think traditionally seagrass is eaten that much, but I'm sure you could because it doesn't, I mean, as far as I know, it doesn't have too many nasty chemicals. And yeah, if it's in healthy water, then it would just be like any kind of plant. I'm sure you could do something nice with it.
And what do we need to do to encourage more women to get into science, or what needs to happen to get more women in science? I'm looking at two of them here that got their doctorates fairly successful, and I'm sure you've both got very high distinctions for both of them. Or do you just get a doctorate or you don't? How's it work? A 0 or 1?
It's just pass or fail.
Okay.
But I'm sure we were highly distinguished.
Yeah, they love this. Yeah. So what? Yeah. So what? Like, it was the professor that kind of got you in, the person that was teaching that made you want to go to that university. What got you into science?
Well, to be honest, I wasn't interested in science during high school until I had the best amazing biology teacher in year 11, and that was it. She did it for me. That was it. I was never going to be a scientist. I had no idea what I wanted to be, and then she came along. Just such, straight out of uni, very inspiring, found my love of biology and never looked back.
Yeah. And where can we find out more about your work or what you do online?
I'm actually pretty easy to Google. My last name is pretty obvious. There's a few things on the work, Office of Environment and Heritage website about the work that I do, and I've also just posted a few articles about research papers and different things I've done. So yeah, frogs and water.
Well, now you've got another amphibian person down there, Jodi. Is it what's the tension within the amphibian world? Is she really into the vampire frog and you like the ones that go up trees? How's it work?
Oh, no, we're all just one big happy family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And where can we find your work online and read about what you do?
Well, I also work for the Office of Environment and Heritage, and actually I've just had a number of reports published on the Office of Environment website. So if you just look up Hunter River reports, you'll see them all there.
Oh, thank you. Any advice for anybody in school at the moment thinking, gee, maybe environmental science might be my thing? What's your advice to them?
Well, I think if you love nature and you love the outdoors and you love the environment, then if you're at all interested in science, you should keep at it, because I'm very happy with the work choices I've made and I've loved every job that I've done. So I think I'm very lucky.
You're one of the happiest scientists I've seen tonight. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, hang on. Oh, hello. Yes, now, what have you been looking and doing with the scientists here this evening at the Powerhouse?
We've just met a blue-tongue lizard and a shingleback lizard from Taronga Zoo.
Have you ever had any of them in your backyard? The blue-tongue lizards occasionally turn up.
Unfortunately, no. I live in an apartment, so...
Never know. In the elevator, they've been known to turn up. So what did you learn about them? Because it's always great when you meet these things firsthand and the people really know what they're talking about.
These two particular lizards were rescue animals.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, it was great to see that Taronga tried to release the blue tongue, but unfortunately
it came back in a cab.
It did come back rather fast.
And are you involved in science at all?
No, I volunteered for the festival a few years ago, and so I came along tonight, and it's been really great.
And what's been your favourite scientist? Have you met someone in an area you like?
I haven't met any scientists tonight, but we did watch the Sherlock Holmes film with comedians doing the voiceover, and that was really good.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And there might be a blue tongue in a flat wouldn't be a bad thing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Look, Maynard here on the beat, and of course at any launch you need a DJ in the corner playing music, but it's not really a dance venue, it's more like an ambient venue. Who have we got here?
Taylor Faint.
Good to speaking to you, sir. Now, what sort of crowd are they? Are they a tough one?
Just a bunch of nerds. bunch of nerds.
So what have you been playing to them? You've been playing some stuff with some Stephen Hawking samples in there, or?
Yeah, just some out-of-this-world music.
Yeah. And tell me, look, corporate events, it's a nasty one because you can have people coming up and asking, has anyone requested anything tonight?
No requests so far.
Dream gig.
Yeah.
You turn up, you play the stuff and you go home. Well done. So what's been your favourite track that you've kind of slipped in there? Some Aphex Twin, maybe?
No Aphex Twin. Maybe Bowie's Space Oddity.
Oh, okay. They would have loved that one. Look, have a good night. Enjoy the gig. So you reckon, nerds, top crowd to work to? Easy.
Top crowd.
Thank you, sir.
Well, there you go.
Well, we're heading off now. Richard, think it's been a good night. The winner tonight has been science.
The winner tonight has been science. It's been fabulous. It's late and there are still lots of people looking at the science here at the Powerhouse Museum. A great success, I think.
on Maynard.com.au. Welcome to Bunga Bunga
39 episodes, 39 events, 39 cataclysms.
With a show that challenges the government, the God, and your very self. On today's show, you'll hear...
There are times, I must admit, that we all manage to get pretty grubby.
That thing over there. And Tim, what will we hear from you?
Well, we won't be talking about this.
You're a selfish, rude, arrogant...
On Maynard.com.au. Hey, you!
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone this week, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, I do have an important announcement to make. A bit of a sad one, I'm afraid. A couple of weeks ago, I was in San Francisco. I went to the Exploratorium, and you may remember I interviewed Dr. Paul Doherty, who wrote the book, And Then You're Dead, A Scientific Exploration of the World's Most Interesting Ways to Die. Paul took me on a personal tour of the Exploratorium. He was just the most amazingly interesting man, a bundle of energy, enthusiasm for science and science education like I've rarely seen. And so you can imagine how sad I was to hear just a couple of days ago that Paul has died. And I'm very shocked and saddened to hear this. I'm grateful for Paul for his time. And I'm so glad I got to meet him and interview him and spend time with him at the Exploratorium as he took me around and was so happy to show me all the experiments and the tests and the wonderful things there. So a great loss to the scientific community. If you want to relive some of the magic and enthusiasm that Paul had, you can hear that adventure on Skeptic Zone number 453 from the 25th of June 2017. Sad news indeed, but on the positive side, he lived a good life and he was a champion of science education. Coming up on next week's show, Maynard and I perform for National Science Week at the Australian Museum, doing the Mystery Investigators, a little bit of behind the scenes and a bit of the fun of the Mystery Investigators show. Also, Iran Segev, with his Grain of Salt segment, catches up with Cara Santa Maria from The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. And the lucky dog, he's also right now, I believe right now or in the next few hours, he will also be in the path of totality for the solar eclipse. It's fascinating to think now that if I walk outside and find the moon, I'm not sure if I can. I don't know if it's up or down. I can certainly see the sun, that's shining. It's fascinating to think that science knows that the moon is going to cross over the face of the sun to the millisecond. And not only now, but in years to come, as we were mentioning earlier with Evan Bernstein, there is a solar eclipse, a total eclipse, going to go right over Sydney, Australia. And I wonder if I'll still be doing the Skeptic Zone in 2028, July the 22nd. A total solar eclipse will occur and Sydney will be effectively blotted out from the sun around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, Sydney-siders, that's something to look forward to. But until then, or at least next week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter @SkepticZone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation.